Hello rail fans and model railroaders. It's time for my layout tour as it stands in April of 2021. As you saw in the intro, my layout's pretty small. It's about 12 by 2 foot and it is constructed on foamular pink foam with a wood base. It's set up to be semi-modular, but that kind of went out the window pretty early on. So a little backstory. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, Boulder Creek, California had a railroad running through it. That dried up about 1930, 1940, somewhere in there. All the track is pretty much ripped out. You can still find some remains buried up in the woods, but none of it is useful, and most of the right-of-way has been lost to the ages. You can find little bits of it if you know what you're looking for, but it's not readily apparent to most people. The main product for the area was redwood lumber. In fact, the entrance to my neighborhood is actually an old lumber mill. You can see some of the original right-of-way in the way that the roads are laid out. To bring this full circle, my layout is a representation of what could have been if Southern Pacific had installed a tunnel from Saratoga to roughly a couple miles north of Boulder Creek before they were bought out by Union Pacific. My layout doesn't have any logging on it, but it does have a couple of other industries kind of fitting in wherever they can to avoid the urban sprawl of the Silicon Valley. This section represents the north side, as if you're heading out to Saratoga via the unfortunately never built rail tunnel. So here's kind of an overview of my layout. Left is north, right is south. So a few of the buildings that I have over here are this standing grocery store. I haven't built what I would like to personally put there, as I got this model given to me by somebody who was getting rid of a number of dioramas that he built. It's also very detailed, so I figured it's just going to stay there for now. Here in the front, I have my rip track for all manners of various repairs that are needed on site. The mountains can be kind of hard on some of the cars and engines, so I figured that this would be a good bit of visual interest for the layout. Over here in the back is probably one of the buildings that I'm most proud of, despite the fact that it's pretty basic. It's the Walthers train line factory kit, and it has no paint on it whatsoever. It's just been heavily detailed and weathered. This building represents what I'm calling adjacent fertilizer. The reason that it's called adjacent fertilizer is because it's adjacent to the main line. Since it's such a nondescript factory, I can also change the name pretty easily. This industry has the advantage that it can accept numerous carloads out in the front here. It can accept box cars, it can accept tank cars with fertilizer in it, it can accept even flat cars, etc. The next area south on my layout is what I like to call Reed Aggregate. This is comprised of the Blue Star Ready Mix and the Black Gold asphalt plant. It's kind of a conglomerate under one overall name. Over here to the right we have the Aggregate transfer station and also where the tank cars would be parked. So this area can take my hopper cars full of aggregate and these tank cars full of bitumen for the asphalt plant. Basically the flow behind this is the cars get dropped off, they either offload the bitumen or the aggregate, and then that goes out to the plants right next door to it. So moving on to the south side of my layout, which at this stage is currently the least finished part of my layout. As you can see over here, the tracks will go behind this engine facility, and that's headed out towards Felton and Santa Cruz, Watsonville, Monterey, etc. So as I said, this is where the engine facility is at, where they're going to store either some of the local switchers, as you see in the background of some of the earlier shots, or it might also be used to do some minor repairs or store some of the local helpers. I'm planning on this being a more scenic area of the layout. The hill in the background there kind of represents a mountain, and the big white section that you see right there is going to be a stream going into a pond. So it's kind of hard to see behind this coil car, and just the fact that it's kind of pointing away from you anyways. There's going to be a culvert where some of the water, once it comes into that pond, it's going to eventually overflow. and flow out of the culvert section right here that I don't have cut out yet. So one of the issues that I ran into is I didn't leave myself enough room beyond this last switch on either side of the layout. So I don't have enough room to put more than like one car and a 4-axle switcher in there, or maybe a 6-axle switcher and a shorter car. So one of the things that I'm going to end up having to do is I'm going to need to put some kind of cassette system on this at some point, so I can have it fold down or be out of the way. As you can see over here on the other side, I also have that same problem, although what I'm going to end up doing with this is I'm going to put the NMRBO layout in there. Once it's finished, I want to make it removable and able to be slotted in right over here, so that when I'm not using that section, it can just be pulled away and put away. Anyways, thank you for joining me on this layout tour. Boulder Creek Yard out.